Hello everyone, my name is Sarah DeFelice and I have chosen the social cognitive theory to speak about today. This is my infographic. I will be explaining each section here throughout this presentation. Historically, the social cognitive theory evolved from Albert Bandura's social learning theory. Albert Bandura, a psychologist who initially pioneered innovative research examining the foundations of human learning, first developed a social learning theory to explain how learning is a process that occurs within a social context. The social learning theory involves observing behaviors, modeling, reinforcement, and cognition. In a basic level, the social learning theory suggests that people learn new behaviors through observing others, imitating their behavior, and then being reinforced by the observed outcomes of the behavior. For example, adolescents exposed to smoke are more likely to smoke. The social cognitive theory was developed and has been refined to apply to health behavior by Albert. The key difference between the social learning theory and the evolved social cognitive theory is that social cognitive theory is predicated on the concept that the social environment is a central influence on behavior, making personal characteristics alone an inadequate explanation of health behaviors. The social cognitive theory recognizes that the social environment, the characteristics of an individual, and behavior interact and influence each other. In other words, nearly all human behavior is influenced by the immediate social environment in which the behavior occurs. For a better understanding of this action, let's take a look at the Tridactic reciprocal causation aspect of the social cognitive theory. As seen in this figure, the triad consists of the environment, the person, and the behavior. The environment represents any social, economic, policy, legal, or physical influence that can act on behavior. Consider the line which extends from environment to behavior. Examples of this interaction may include state programs that provide free vaccinations to children, cultural norms that shape eating behaviors, and taxes on alcohol to curb drinking. Now consider the line which shows how behavior in turn could shape our environment. Examples of this interaction may include citizens lobbying for environmental tobacco smoke laws. Now let's consider the line from the environment to the person, but first it's important to understand that person in this model is defined as a sum of all cognitive attributes like self-efficacy and outcome expectations. An example of this influence may be a policy or law having an effect on a teen female's level of self-efficacy to obtain birth control. An example of the reciprocal pathway extending from person to environment could be a community of young gay men all begin to view HIV/AIDS as a medically manageable disease. That view creates a sociocultural environment. The pathway extending from the person to behavior represents that people's perception or cognitions will dictate their behavior. The reciprocal pathway is extending from the behavior back to the person. In this pathway, a behavior is put forth to influence people's perceptions or cognitions. An example of this may be a person decides to run a mile a day with the expectation of losing weight. They run perfectly, but they don't lose weight for whatever reason. Consequently, they altered their cognitions or outcome expectation as a result of engaging in a behavior. Now, let's take a look at the major constructs of the social cognitive theory, along with methods which can be used to support the constructs. Outcome expectations is a person's judgment of the likely consequence of a behavior. For instance, the statement, when I vaccinate my children, I will prevent them from getting certain diseases. The method of reinforcement can be used to support this construct. Regardless of whether the reinforcement is positive or negative, reinforcement usually takes the form of experiencing tangible and immediate benefits for performing a behavior. An example of positive reinforcement may be and insurance companies that reward smoking cessation with a policy discount. Outcome expectancies are the values that individuals place on a certain outcome. Like preventing disease in my children is something I value. Self-efficacy is an individual's judgment on his or her capability to accomplish a certain level of performance. They must have knowledge of the behavior as well as skills to attain the behavior. The method of verbal persuasion can be used to support self-efficacy. The intent of verbal persuasion is to convince people that they can indeed perform a given health protective behavior. For instance, group-based intervention for weight loss may include activities that will verbally persuade participants they can walk away from non-nutrient dense foods. Behavioral capacity. The concept here is that if people are to perform a particular type of behavior, they must know what the behavior is and how to perform the behavior. It is the actual ability a person has to perform the behavior. Breastfeeding, for example, breastfeeding can be a complicating process. Behavioral capability here may reference mom's knowledge that breastfeeding is the best way to feed her baby, and she will have the capability to breastfeed, like knowing how to properly latch your baby. The method of enactive mastery can be used to support behavioral capability. Enactive mastery experiences provide procedural knowledge of the activities, practice in performing those activities, and feedback about successful performance. Perceived behaviors of others. This involves the method of modeling. Simply stated, people learn from watching others perform a given behavior. The method of modeling can be used to support this construct. Modeling is maximized when people observe someone quite similar to themselves successfully performing or not successfully performing a given health protective behavior. An example of this is the Women, Infant, Children Breastfeeding Peer Counseling Program. In a nutshell, WIC moms who are currently breastfeeding or have breastfed in the past are hired to work directly with other WIC moms who choose to breastfeed. The peer counselors demonstrate breastfeeding and support new moms on their breastfeeding journey by offering support. And lastly, the environment. The environment refers to an objective notion of all the factors that can affect a person's behavior, but that are physically external to that person. The social environment may include family, friends, peers, and neighbors. The physical environment may include air quality, access to healthy food, public transportation, and safe walkable streets. The method of facilitation, which is the provision of means for the learner to take action or means to reduce barriers to action. Case study, Food Safety and Nutrition Education Program for Adolescents. The purpose of this study was to develop an educational model regarding food safety and nutrition. They aim to develop educational materials such as middle and high school textbooks, a teacher's guidebook, and school posters by applying the social cognitive theory. To develop a food safety and nutrition education program, they took into account diverse factors, including an individual's behavior, such as personal, behavioral, and environmental factors based on social cognitive theory. They also conducted a pilot study of the educational materials targeting middle school students, high school students, and dietitians regarding comprehension level, content, design, and quality. This resulted in developing their food safety and nutrition education program to cover 6 themes: caffeine, food additives, foodborne illnesses, nutrition and meal planning, obesity and eating disorders, and nutrition labeling. In their program, each class activity was created to improve self-efficacy by setting one's own goal and to increase self-control by monitoring one's dietary intake. To address the social environment, they included teachers, families, and peers by developing a leaflet for parents and creating posters for teachers and peers. Looking at the example of nutrition and meal planning, you can see how they developed curriculum based on construct and methods pertaining to the social cognitive theory. So this is a table that they had in uh, their document, and it just kind of tells you what they looked at. So they had the category, this is just one of the 6, is nutrition and meal planning. So they looked at behavioral capability, outcome expectations, self-efficacy, observational learning modeling, outcome expectancies, self-regulation, self-control, and they also looked at the environment. And beneath are the examples of things that they incorporated and did to look at those constructs. There are a few limitations in this study. First, the education model covers only 6 subjects regarding food safety and nutrition. Future research needs to include more themes to cover additional critical dietary problems in the adolescents, such as safe food handling and healthy food purchases. Further, evaluation of this program is needed after implementation to analyze successful or unsuccessful behavior change. The second case study, Childhood Obesity Prevention Program. The purpose of this project was to develop and test the feasibility of home environment obesity prevention program that incorporates mindful eating strategies and the social cognitive theory constructs. The Home Sweet Home program was specifically designed for rural parents and grandparents of preschool-aged children. Conceptually, they believed that altering the home environment and the behaviors of the parents would lead to changes in the behaviors of the child, which would positively impact the child's health. The table here represents the constructs used from the social cognitive theory in relation to the educational components of the program. After implementation of the program, results showed 3 of the 4 target behaviors improved over the intervention period. The number of hours that parents and children watched television or played video games significantly decreased between the pre and post intervention interviews. The number of red light foods consumed daily by the adult and child also decreased significantly. 3 of the 4 mindful eating significantly improved between the pre and post intervention assessments. Lastly, the number of family meals consumed per week did not change between the pre-intervention period and the post-intervention period. The social cognitive theory has many positive aspects. Putting emphasis on the environment, I feel, is essential. In the previous childhood obesity prevention case study, the program focused on the home environment of the child. In my work with the WIC program, I see efforts in clinic by dietitians to teach and motivate caregivers on various subjects. However, if the family's environment outside the clinic does not support the messages given, behavior change is unlikely. For instance, a dietitian can speak with mom about increasing fresh fruits and vegetables. However, if mom lives in a food desert or doesn't have transportation, purchasing fresh fruits and vegetables will seem impossible to her. Another positive aspect of the theory is the emphasis on self-efficacy. Many health behavior models share this construct, or a version of, self-efficacy, because it's important to believe you can do something, and without it, behavior change is not likely. Some cons of the social cognitive theory include not focusing more on emotion and motivation. In the childhood obesity prevention case study, motivations of caregivers changing their home environment to promote the basic concept of the study was not measured or addressed. In addition, the social cognitive theory is broad and therefore it is hard to implement fully. Both case studies mentioned in this presentation only address certain constructs. In addressing the con or gap of the social cognitive theory regarding the lack of focus on one's emotions or motivations, you can look to the self-determination theory for closure. The self-determination theory examines the degree to which an individual's behavior is self-motivated or self-determined. And these are the references that I used throughout this presentation. And thank you for taking the time to listen. I hope you enjoyed it, and I look forward to listening to yours. Thank you.